"No, Mom. This is an abomination," Daniel exclaimed, but Mary protested, "Hurry before your father returns," and this happened. This is a true life story that occurred in a village in Kumasi. Kindly subscribe and stay tuned. Here is Mary. Mary was a beautiful and mysterious orphan who lived alone in a secluded house at the edge of the village. She was known for her beauty, but also for her strange way of living. Many men came to her house, hoping to marry her, but Mary wasn't interested in any of them. She had one peculiar condition for choosing a husband: he had to possess an unusually large size. This thought consumed her. She couldn't stop obsessing over it. Whenever she met a man, she would, without fail, inspect him discreetly, searching for the one feature she believed was the key to happiness. Mary's fixation on this idea began to control her life, leading her to reject countless suitors who she deemed unsatisfactory. One day, a man named Isaac came to ask for her hand in marriage. Isaac was kind, gentle, and seemed genuinely in love with Mary. But when she looked at him, her first thoughts were not about his kindness but about his body. After some observation, Mary was pleased with what she saw, but still, she needed to be sure. "I need to know if we are physically compatible before the wedding," she told him. Isaac agreed without hesitation. After they were intimate, Mary felt a wave of satisfaction. She smiled, knowing that this man could fulfill her deepest desires. Soon after, they were engaged, and the wedding plans began. At the wedding, many of the men Mary had previously rejected attended, curious to see the man who had finally won her heart. The men had long speculated about Mary's high standards, and now they had the chance to see if Isaac truly measured up. Mary, on the other hand, danced with joy, feeling confident that her needs would be met and that she would never have to compromise again. After the wedding, life seemed perfect. Mary and Isaac lived happily together, but soon an unsettling pattern began to emerge. Mary's desires, once manageable, became more demanding. She wanted intimacy constantly, and Isaac, though loving and devoted, soon grew exhausted. He tried to meet her needs at first, but the constant pressure wore him down. Isaac began to withdraw. Whenever Mary would ask for intimacy, he would find reasons to avoid her, hoping that her insatiable desires would eventually subside. But they didn't. Instead, her cravings grew, and she became increasingly frustrated. A few months later, Mary discovered she was pregnant. Isaac, though happy at the news, secretly hoped that the pregnancy would give him some relief. He believed that the arrival of their child would distract her, at least temporarily. 9 months later, Mary gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Daniel. Isaac was overjoyed. He thanked God for their son, hoping that the arrival of the child would bring peace and balance back into their lives. But he couldn't have been more wrong. As Daniel grew, Mary's obsession with him began to take a dark turn. She started to notice how quickly he was developing, particularly in areas that reminded her of Isaac's size. Daniel's body, as he entered his teenage years, began to resemble that of a young man, and Mary couldn't help but stare. By the time Daniel turned 20, Mary's fixation on his body had escalated. She found herself frequently watching him, especially when he wore shorts. Daniel, innocent and unaware of his mother's feelings, began to notice her behavior. "Mom, why do you keep staring at me like that?" Daniel asked one afternoon as Mary gazed at him while he was getting dressed. Mary quickly tried to hide her emotions. "Oh, I'm just admiring how much you've grown. You're such a blessing, Daniel," she said with a forced smile. But Daniel, still unaware, smiled back. "You're the best mom in the world," he said, oblivious to the tension building between them. One fateful day, Daniel was about to change clothes in his room when Mary walked in without knocking. She was taken aback by what she saw. Her son had grown even more handsome, and his body, particularly his size, had become something she could no longer ignore. Mary, consumed by her desires, approached Daniel slowly. "Daniel," she said in a low voice, "I want us to be closer, in a way that no one can understand." Daniel froze, his heart racing. "Mom, no. This is wrong. It's an abomination," he exclaimed, horrified. Mary, driven by her twisted obsession, ignored his protests. "Hurry," she whispered urgently, "before your father returns." Afterward, Daniel was left alone in the room, his mind reeling. He sat on the bed, tears welling in his eyes. "I've committed a terrible sin," he whispered to himself. But Mary, dismissing his anguish, tried to calm him down. "You've done nothing wrong," she said softly, her voice full of false comfort. "We are connected in a way no one can understand. We can be lovers, and no one will ever know. There's no shame in it." Their secret affair began, hidden from Isaac. Mary spoiled Daniel with gifts, taking him on shopping sprees and buying him the finest clothes. They became inseparable. Isaac, noticing their growing closeness, assumed it was merely the natural bond between a mother and son. But as time passed, things grew more complicated. Daniel, though initially reluctant, became addicted to the intimacy with his mother. The bond between them deepened, and soon, Daniel found himself unable to escape the cycle they had created. One day, Daniel met a woman he wanted to marry. He was excited to introduce her to Mary, hoping she would approve of his choice. But when Mary saw the woman, something inside her snapped. "No!" Mary shouted, her voice cold with fury. "Don't ever bring someone like that into my house. She can't have you. You belong to me, Daniel." Before Daniel could react, Mary stormed over and pushed the woman out of the house. "If you ever bring another woman like her here, I'll do worse," she warned, her eyes filled with rage. "I'll make sure she regrets it." Daniel, now desperate, confronted his mother. "You need to stop this, Mom, or I'll stop everything between us." "You'll never stop," Mary snapped back. "We're in this together, and it will never end." But Daniel, feeling trapped, knew he had to do something. He couldn't live this way forever. One evening, after a heated argument, he finally confessed everything to Isaac. "Dad," Daniel said, his voice trembling with rage, "Mom has been forcing me to sleep with her because of my body. She's too jealous to let me marry anyone else." Isaac stood frozen, unable to comprehend what his son was saying. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Did you sleep with her?" "Yes," Daniel replied coldly. "Many times. Whenever you weren't around, she made me. And she won't stop. We've done it in every room of this house, and it's never enough for her." Isaac's heart shattered. He couldn't believe the words coming from his own son's mouth. His wife, the woman he had trusted and loved, had betrayed him in the most unimaginable way. Mary stood in silence, her face drained of color. She couldn't believe that Daniel had exposed their dark secret. The shame of it was unbearable. Isaac, filled with disgust and sorrow, rushed to the village chief to report the horrific sin. The elders convened, and their judgment was swift. Mary and Daniel were banished to the forbidden forest, a place for those who had committed the most unforgivable crimes. Isaac, though heartbroken, knew that he had to move on. He remarried a woman who loved him unconditionally and respected him. The peace he had longed for finally returned to his life. Meanwhile, Mary and Daniel were left in the forbidden forest, cursed by their actions. They lived in isolation, haunted by the consequences of their desires. Every day was filled with regret, but it was too late to turn back. This story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of giving in to unhealthy desires and the consequences of keeping dark secrets. Such actions may provide temporary satisfaction, but they ultimately lead to destruction, regret, and ruin. Honesty, respect, and self-control are the keys to a fulfilled and happy life. What do you also have to say about this story? Let us know in the comment section.